One of the most compelling elements of Masaaki Yuasa's work is how he animates a world. Yuasa brings his works to life in many ways, and one of the most convincing being the setting. The worlds of his stories become more than a backdrop for a narrative. They become part of the narrative themselves, taking on a character of their own. One of the ways Yuasa achieves this strong sense of location is the way in which he animates his setting. It's more than just a two-dimensional backdrop for the foreground. It's dynamic, it has depth. It really is more than just a set piece. The dynamic nature of his settings is one of the most important elements. What's just as important, if not more important than the world itself, is how you travel through the world. How a setting is presented can drastically change your perspective. One of the most notable uses from Yuasa's work being how he moves through a scene. Not only does the camera move around the scene with fantastic flow, but also the various elements in the scene move around too. This combination gives a really vibrant feel to his locations and helps animate the world. This scene from Crayon Shinchan is a perfect example of how camera and character movement come together. Notice how the camera sticks to the characters as they move throughout the world. This is much more effective than having a couple of shots from a distance. You just get much more immersed in the world here. Even from this short clip you can get a sense of scale and atmosphere, ultimately adding to the setting Yuasa is building. Or maybe this one from Yuasa's episode of Space Dandy. The camera is a lot more static here, but that's made up for with the fantastic use of world movement. This scene captures the world that they're in with its vastly contrasting shot distances. We have this shot looking over the characters, and then we have this close-up of our character Dandy, and then we have a planet-sized shot that shows the complete scale of the location. With just 3 smart cuts, Yuasa can give us a complete rundown of the location they're in. You see details about the world size, character emotion, and get a sense of scale, giving you a lot more information than a still background other shows might use. And as you can see, Yuasa's ability to dynamically present a scene with lots of movement and variation totally brings the world to life. The extra perspectives you get into the setting is very important. Understanding how the setting affects the story and characters just adds an extra layer, and most of his stories have a very large focus on location. The Tatami galaxy, for example, is basically built upon its location, and how the location works its way into the lives of our characters. Kaiba is all about exploring a new alien world through a fresh lens. Mind Game has a similar sense of exploring a location, and Pong uses its location heavily as symbolic places for thematic development. I'll explain that a bit more later in the video. But they all have a strong reliance on the world in which they take place in, so you can see why it's important to animate the world in a way which the viewer can connect with. Another way Yuasa achieves this is through his 3D movement, which he actually uses quite a lot. This isn't something you would expect, as animating 3D space with 2D animation is pretty complex, but you'll notice that this contrast of simplicity and complexity recurs throughout his animation. The most obvious example of this would be his iconic battle scenes in Ping Pong. Throughout these matches, perspective, scale and speed are utilised to create impact, which is the aim of these scenes. The reason these matches had such visual impact was because how the viewer was taken through them. We're not just showing a ping pong match, we're showing the ping pong match spliced with emotion and intertwining narratives. One of my other favourite examples would be this chase scene from the first episode of Kaiba. This is important because in Kaiba we're being introduced to a completely new world. The simple option would be to use some establishing shots and maybe explanatory narrative, but Yuasa's dynamic chase scene works a lot better. As our characters run through the streets of their world, we're given so much information, like the confined nature of society, the high level of control, or the imbalance in the class system. We're told all of this without any characters having to explain it, all because Yuasa's brilliant ability to animate a world. There's some nice examples of how 3D animation, if presented in the right manner, can make something really interesting. It doesn't all have to look terrible. Animating in 3 dimensions opens up so many opportunities for storytelling. Presenting characters in a different light is one of them. In fact, character movement, the way in which they interact with the world, could possibly be one of the most important aspects yet. I mean, what is a world without the people to populate it? When it comes to character movement, it's the subtle ways in which a character moves in relation to the world that matters. How someone reacts to an element of the world can completely set a scene. Again, I'll be looking at Kaiba as an example because it just has such a solid understanding of its world. I thought one of the first really powerful moments was when, in episode 2, one of the characters is found smuggling memories onto a plane. Him and the people around him's reaction was amazing. Nothing specific was done, but the emotions portrayed through character movement was spectacular. Like the subtle change in behaviour when the gun was pulled out. This not only tells you a lot about the current scene, but sheds so much light into how people interact with their world. This scene is a fantastic early look into the society of the show. Everything I've discussed so far is about giving your world character, and one of Yuasa's most characteristic world building techniques is the aesthetic design. It's certainly one of the most fascinating parts of his anime for myself. especially because each show has a very distinct style with its own influences and connotations. The way in which a world looks is absolutely one of the most important aspects of bringing a world to life. Yuasa builds a lot of his settings with this minimalistic aesthetic, focusing on things like shape and movement rather than detail or realism. Without being held back by the need for maintaining detail continuity or anything of the sorts, Yuasa can create worlds like this every episode. He can expand the world in which his stories take place at a fantastic rate. This allows Yuasa to focus in on the more important elements of a world like scale or architecture, and each series is given an aesthetic theme as well, like Tatami is based on old Japanese print art, or Kaiba taking influence from Western animation. Even look at more detailed world design like Pong. Although there's a lot more detail, it's done with a painted aesthetic, leaving a lot of room for change and variety. Again, the basics of the world are the focus. Core symbols like the ocean or the tournament building, they are given the focus. And these locations don't just serve as visual markers for the series, they stand as symbolic tie-ins with the narrative. Using Pong as a continued example, these locations, the ocean and the tournament building among other places, have emotional weight despite having never been directly referenced. We're not told that the beach is specifically more important a location than any of the others, but it becomes the centrepiece of one of the show's core themes. Lots of related scenes take place here, like Peko jumping into the sea, the scene in the final episode, or even just the lost traveller making his final decision at the ocean. Having such strong emotional attachment to these locations like this gives them much more meaning than just pretty backdrops. Yuasa brings the worlds of his anime to life better than almost anything I've seen before. The way in which he makes the world feel so ingratiated with the story, and how the characters so naturally interact with it, it's all very impressive, and more importantly, it helps tell a story. Everything I've talked about has boiled down to that, down to the world telling a story, and that is how Yuasa animates a world. So that concludes this video on how Yuasa animates a world, and this is one of a number of Masaaki Yuasa videos I'm making right now. I kinda just wanted to put all my thoughts on Masaaki Yuasa into one set of videos so I don't have to keep coming back to him in the future. There's a lot to cover, but I'm really enjoying how these are turning out, and hope that's coming across. So if you have any thoughts that relate to this video on how Yuasa designs his world, or how he animates them, or anything related to Masaaki Yuasa, please do post them in the comments, I'd be very happy to read them. But that's all for this video. I've got some really interesting videos coming up soon, so stay tuned. Cheers.